Welcome to Norse Code, a very special edition of the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm Dusty O'Connell, coming at you from the Barrowboy and Banker pub in central London, England, of all places.
Yeah, right?
And I am joined by, of all people...
Of all people.
Yeah, right. Our customary co-host, Minnesota Vikings blogger extraordinaire, useful human, and globe-trotting traveler, and Facebook Live fail artist, Arif.
Yeah, right, yeah.
How you doing, Arif?
I'm glad you threw in a couple of insults because it's like a lot more awkward to accept the compliments like in person.
Well, you spend enough time working together, you get this kind of familiarity, even though I've actually never seen your face while podcasting with you before.
Yeah, which to clarify, we've met before, like we know each other from before podcasting, but
this just like reduces the difficulty of taping significantly.
Yeah, we can just talk. It's weird.
I know, without talking over each other like every time. Anyway.
We'll talk over each other.
So we're here in London right now, and I just want to take a second to say thank you to everybody who has contributed in the past to make a trip like this possible. And we've got a small posse of dedicated listeners who have joined us at the pub. We've also got a special guest coming later on this afternoon. Well, I guess
evening, night.
Well, no, it's still afternoon in America.
Sure, afternoon.
I blame jet lag.
Adjusted.
Yeah. Afternoon adjusted.
Yeah. Today.
You know him from the Daily Norseman, but Eric Thompson is going to be here in a little bit if he can ever find his way out of the stadium. Yeah, it turns out traffic is a thing in London. Who knew?
Brutal.
Yeah. So we've got a great show lined up for you. But before that, I just want to take a moment again to say thank you to everybody who contributes to Norse Code on an ongoing basis. You can join this wonderful pantheon of humans by going to the elitist pantheon. You can become a king among kings by going to Norse Code, by going to patreon.com/Norse Code and contributing a few bucks. We prefer a $5 or more donation. It will enable you to get one of our sweet Norse Code stickers, which at least 2 people have gotten at the taping of this episode, and no one has left them at the table yet. So they're probably fine.
Huge hit.
Huge hit. You can also go to paypal.me and I'm really killing it. paypal.me/Norse Code. I'm just too excited. And leave a one-time contribution in our tip jar. And if it's $5 or more, give us your address, and we'll send you a sticker. It's just that simple. Super prepared.
Do you normally read the thank you off a script or something? Is that...
No, I'm just so excited. I've never done the thank you from inside a pub in London before. That's my excuse.
Sure.
I've literally only ever done it from my desk. Also, new thing as of this week, very grateful to one of our Scottish listeners, John Mainland, for contributing Norse Code Nessie to the random collection of kitsch that follows this show around. You can become a supporting member of the Norse Code community. Throw us your name and address if you're interested in bringing Norse Code Nessie around the world. He's already been to a few great places, and if you want to see his travels, you can just go to @NorseCodeNessie on the Instagram, and we look forward to sending him all around the world and kind of displaying the breadth and depth of the Minnesota Vikings community, which we got to see on display today. The number of different jerseys that we saw was pretty epic, but it's like you could tell a little bit. Well, actually, Steve sitting right here clued us into it. You could tell that there were people that just showed up and wanted to buy a jersey by the number of like brand new Latavius Murray jerseys.
Yeah, so we were pretty confused as to like why we were seeing so many Latavius Murray jerseys. Like, I don't like hate the guy or anything, right? But it's like, you know, if I'm gonna like pin my hopes on one player on the Vikings, like not in my top 10, right? So I was like, maybe is he secretly British? Like, why does he have like this enormous following? It turns out, so yeah, we got a clue. I guess they're just selling Latavius Murray jerseys at the NFL Challenge? Yeah, all right, yeah.
Murray is a Scottish surname.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That could be it.
Yeah.
Well, no, and the Moritz Böhringer jerseys made sense because he's super popular in Germany, and you don't like. So a curiosity about NFL games in the UK is that there are so few of them that it's not just the teams that play in the game. We saw like the whole rainbow of NFL jerseys on display. Some really great throwbacks from other teams, and with the exception of like Latavius Murray and Moritz Böhringer, you didn't really see any like goal line backs or like practice squad players represented in the jerseys that were in the stands.
Yeah, no, there were some really good throwbacks from other teams. I saw a Warwick Dunn jersey, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I saw Dan Marino, of course, because the 80s, like I guess the NFL first started broadcasting in the 80s. Dan Marino, right?
Very much
So there's actually a bunch of Dolphins fans in the UK.
Bears as well.
Yeah, a bunch of Bears fans. I didn't see that many. Well, I saw a couple of Bears jerseys. There was one on our bus on the way here, but it was more modern, so I didn't really get it. It was a contemporary player. Don't really understand why that.
I saw a Joe Montana classic quarterback.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
49ers, Bears, Dolphins are quite big. At the time, it became big over here.
Right.
Which is why I became a Vikings fan.
I admire your choice. I'm not certain it was wise.
I didn't understand I would be here with you guys and Gal now, and I think I'm still happy with my choice, despite my record of 2-0 with Matt Castle and Case Keenan getting the W's. But you take the rough with the so far rough, and the smooth is yet to follow.
The highs are not as high without the lows, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
And
genuine bar staff interrupting broadcast first.
Yeah, right? That's how you know we're from a pub.
Minnesota Nice knows no political boundaries, it turns out. So, but I tell you what surprised me the most was meeting the nicest Patriots fan in the history of the universe.
Oh, yeah, he was phenomenal.
And this, like, in many ways, you could have mistaken this person for an American Patriots fan because he was maybe 6'5", 280 pounds.
Yeah. So he was wearing this Gronk jersey, and I was like, is he related? Yeah, right. And then this British accent comes out, and you're like, well, he's clearly not related to Gronkowski.
Well, no, and it wasn't so much the accent as the content that made it clear to me that he was not an American Patriots fan. Because, I mean, we were, there were the four of us on the bus trying to figure out where we were supposed to get off and like get organized, and if we hadn't had to go pick up our tickets at like a completely different stadium, this man would have probably ushered us directly to our seats.
Yeah, he was great.
No Patriots fan in America would ever do that.
Yeah, no, he was phenomenal. Also, that is kind of an interesting thing. So we had our tickets at Will Call, and those tickets are at another stadium, also called Twickenham, but it's Twickenham Stoop.
Oh, the littler one. Yeah,
the littler one, which is where the Harlequins play, a different rugby team. The Lady Harlequins and the Harlequins. And so we ended up having to like go to the StubHub tent in a completely different stadium. We felt very disoriented, which I think is pretty fair. But we did end up getting like some stress ball footballs, very good for the first half of the game.
Oh, very much.
And some ponchos, which thankfully we didn't need.
No, the weather was perfect. I mean, it was as good of a day as can be expected if you just sort of forget that the first half ever happened.
Right. Yeah.
Because you get the impression that really only one team showed up to play it, and I mean the Browns, God bless them, did their best, which.
They tried their hardest.
Which was rather better than some of us expected.
Yeah, good for a whopping 9 points and a missed extra point. So congratulations to them. But some of the I feel like we struggled not just because of the play, but because and I hate to complain about the officiating in a game that we won, but from the outside of the game, Arif's big three predictions were a touchdown from Adam Thielen, a sack from Everson Griffin, and an injury to Mike Remmers.
Yes.
We checked off one box almost immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so it's my fault. But
It's not your fault. You're just never wrong.
Which is your fault.
yeah, right, which is my fault. I don't know if I expected it to come by way of concussion. I mean, that means he's coming back. So it's definitely, out of all of the injuries it could have been.
Tell that to Justin Morneau.
Oh yeah, right, yeah, all right.
In what capacity?
Good chance of coming back, right? I suppose there's some pretty long-term damage associated with that, so I can't celebrate it too much. But yeah, I mean, Rashad Hill played, and after like the first two series, I mean, I don't think he did all that well in his first series in. After that first series, I thought he did a pretty good job, which was nice because, like, having an offensive line is like still like a new and exciting feeling.
A real novelty.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And like no one's gonna mistake him for like the Oakland Raiders or like the Washington Redskins or the Dallas Cowboys offensive line, but no one needs to. Not that important. They exist and are.
Okay, but dude, how about Danny Isadora?
He was not great.
Well, no, especially out the gate. Like he functionally, we talk about the team falling asleep, but he functionally just may not as well have been there.
Yeah, in the first, I think his first two series, he was abysmal. I think he like increased his level of play over the course of the second quarter,
Which is massively complimentary when you begin at abysmal.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, no, it cleared a high bar by not being abysmal over the course of the next quarter. Then at the beginning of the third quarter, he kind of fell off a little bit, and you can kind of see that reflected in like the running yards per carry by a quarter. Second quarter, fourth quarter, great. First quarter, third quarter, not great. Most of the tackles given up were... I'm not going to say they were mostly by Danny Isadora, but I mean like dollars to donuts. Like you were pretty good chance that Isadora gave up the key tackle. He's up against Danny Shelton sometimes. Really good nose tackle for the Browns. So, you know, you don't want to like blame him too much, but I mean it was his fault.
Well, and it was mostly not his fault. And we got to give credit to last week's guest for pretty accurately predicting who would have a good day against our offensive line.
Yeah, so we had Jeff Riston on last week, and he did a pretty good job, like, you know, explaining, like, you know, the Browns still have a pretty good pass rush even without Myles Garrett, who's out with a concussion. Carl Nassib had just a phenomenal game for the Browns. Couple of pass deflections. It was a screen-heavy game for both teams, and Nassib picked up on that pretty quickly. Was able to get a couple of pressures on Riley Reif. Was able to get some on Rashad Hill, which, you know, right, great on a curve. But, you know, he did a pretty good job, and Emmanuel Ogbah, you know, got a little bit of pressure, not as much. And then Riston also mentioned that the Browns were really good at stuffing those inside runs, which with early on with Latavius Murray was a big problem. And the first, I think, attempt the Vikings tried to go outside was actually with Stephon Diggs. Did not work well, and it took a while for Jerick McKinnon to kind of revive the running game, which is exactly what our guest was worried about. Like, we asked, like, hey, you know, Stephon Diggs may or may not play. Besides Adam Thielen, who are you most worried about? And he said Jerick McKinnon. Browns have had a lot of problems with players that can get into space really well, and he had a phenomenal game, over 120 yards from scrimmage.
So, prediction number 2, 1 sack for Everson Griffin. That one took until the very waning moments of the game to finally achieve, and I think part of that was because Cleveland was like very seriously like planning for him. Like, he was a huge piece of their game.
Well
plan.
aware of him, yeah.
He was getting double and triple teamed all through the first half, and I mean it was just almost impossible for him to get through to Deshaun Kaiser.
Right, like, so I mean obviously for any defensive end, including him, the best way to get to the quarterback is like on third and long, in empty, when they've only got, you know, five protectors or maybe 6 protectors with the running back, and he needs to get past them. And he only had like a couple of those opportunities because they really wanted to keep a tight end in to chip him. And none of their tight ends are like particularly great at blocking, but when you combine them with like this like backup offensive tackle they have, who's really a guard, you know, they were able to make sure that they were able to close down on him. And then the running back was always like paying more attention to him than anyone else if there weren't any blitzers. And so we saw a couple of snaps where Everson Griffin would go up against 2 guys, get off of those 2 on an inside spin, and then the running back would meet him. Like, it was impossible for him to get pressure on a lot of those situations, but he was still able to get that sack at the very end. He was asked actually after the game, like, hey, were you worried that your sack streak wasn't going to continue? And he was like, you know, yeah, I was pretty worried, but then Harrison Smith missed, and so I was able to get, you know, my sack, which, true. We'll see, if the stat correction comes later on Tuesday, if he gets half a sack or a full sack. But for now, he has a full sack, which is nice.
Okay, so speaking of Harrison Smith, I feel like the Browns would have scored maybe 6 more points, assuming another missed kick. Had Harry Smith not, I mean, you got the sense that the rest of the defense was just kind of like slowing down the action. Is it pronounced Isaiah Crowell or Crowell?
I think it's Crowell, not sure.
Crowell, well, okay, so I wasn't sure because the announcer kept calling him Crowell, but he also kept saying that guys were getting wrapped up when they were like tripping over their own feet, or just like whatever, doing the opposite of getting wrapped up with. So I didn't trust him.
So it turns out that that's actually the backup Browns announcer.
I can see why.
Yeah, right. So
Is the other one not allowed to
like I'm much better.
no, he's actually he's sick. The in-stadium Browns announcer was sick, so he couldn't travel. So they just had another guy, and like you get his instincts, right? Like he didn't want to say tackled by every single play, and so he'd like substitute different words in.
They kept substituting the wrong phrase. He did it like 4 times.
Yeah, and so he said wrapped up by, and it's like you can really only use that when someone is like wrapped up and not like tripped or stumbling, and it was like really kind of awkward to hear.
I think he was trying to be different from the Browns guy who just says tackle by all season so far.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because all they've been announcing is tackles, maybe.
Yeah, right, yeah. I don't know, like it was not like a stellar performance, but it's also not like a job that's really marked by differentiation. So, it wasn't great or anything, but yeah, I think you probably got the player names pronunciations, at least on the Browns side, mostly correct, because technically this was a Browns home game.
But this is his job. Yeah, they all the seats had Browns flags underneath them, which I was very disappointed to see. There's
we've got one right
one here in studio. I'm doing air quotes right now.
As yet unfurled. Or
yes, got
furled if you unfurl, I don't know, but still, yeah.
It can remain furled, I think.
Yes.
That seems fair.
Keep it furled, yeah.
I got a Vikings one last time, which was furled at the first opportunity.
Oh yeah, we saw a couple of the Vikings flags.
Throw them back. I thought,
from the 2013 game.
Yeah, and I thought,
4 years later, they show up with their little flags on sticks. Yeah.
I'm a Scottish person. I should be tight-fisted, and I didn't think to do that. What a fool!
There was no guarantee we'd ever be coming back. You thought we might be good.
There's a stereotype I failed to deliver on, but.
So, all that aside, Crowell had a pretty decent first half. I mean, the Browns clearly came in with a game plan to keep the field short. They wanted to keep Xavier Rhodes out of the game as much as they could, almost like Everson Griffin. And to their credit, they mostly did by letting Crowell kind of manage the ball. And when he wasn't managing the ball, then he was managing Everson Griffin. And
right, yeah.
That changed a little bit in the second half, but I mean, his performance was like the Browns' first half performance pretty much hinged on him.
Yeah, no, he was pretty key. We saw a couple of passes to Duke Johnson that were pretty important, but I think Isaiah Crowell was a big part of the first half, offensive output, as it were. And some of that had to do with, I thought Eric Hendricks did a pretty poor job on that touchdown. Eric Thompson was mentioning in our Facebook Live, just still not live yet, in her Facebook Live recording after the game, that, maybe you could put some of it on Anthony Harrison taking a bad angle. Probably mostly on Kendricks, but Crowell did a pretty good job reading his blocks, getting through, and taking advantage of even the couple of situations where we saw Linval Joseph blown off the ball. Don't see that happen a ton. But the defensive line early on kind of struggled, and the Browns took advantage of it, mostly through Isaiah Crowell. As the game progressed, I think the defensive line did a much better job. Eric Hendricks, I think, largely had a really good game. It's just that one play didn't pan out. And then we saw a couple of plays right before that touchdown. Crowell had another run. I thought Anthony Barr was held. Either way, he wasn't getting off his block. Doesn't matter.
Everyone around the table just rolled their eyes at the mention of holding.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and that seemed to be a thorn in the Vikings side for functionally the entire first half. Despite the way that they were obviously trying to cover Griffin, it seemed like the Browns got a lot of assistance from
friendly officiating.
Yeah.
you don't want to talk too much about the officiating in a win, and I don't think it was as egregious as like other games where I've worried about the officiating. But I think in the first half there was like some holding calls in Everson Griffin that weren't like called, and I'm sympathetic to Spencer Drango, the Baylor tackle, now guard, now tackle. I'm sympathetic, right? Like, this guy's on a sack streak. He's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. And I guess he's not leading the league. That's Calais Campbell over the Jaguars. He's not leading the league in sacks, but certainly he could be by the end of the night. And I'm pretty sympathetic to what he was doing. I was pretty annoyed, though, that, there wasn't, any... There wasn't any recourse from the officials, which again, you don't want to complain too much, but I think part of the first half you could have had a couple of complaints about the way that went.
Because the key penalties actually came when we were already up.
Yeah.
The ones that the Browns are penalised for, because we got a drive off McKinnon and them.
Yeah.
And other times it was like time of possession in the first half as well. A huge amount of it was us having the ball, not quite doing anything, and them having the ball sparingly and doing stuff, much to our amazement and disappointment.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that their offense were going to get, their defense were going to get tired, and their offense wouldn't remember what the field looked like, and that may have been how the second half developed a little bit there. But it wasn't what the Vikings fans expected early on, but what the neutrals didn't.
Right, yeah.
Because we know
they
better.
Go in, right? They go in, they see the spread is, I guess it was 9.5 to open, 11 in favor of the Vikings by the time the game actually started.
Woo!
Yeah.
And cover.
Yeah, right, and they got the cover, right?
Not only thanks, but a gigantic first down in the red zone gifted by a pretty obvious pass interference penalty, which they were kind enough to call. Certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah, it didn't hurt. It kind of made up. Diggs didn't have the best game. I think that's more on Keenum.
Pretty far.
Right, yeah. I think it may be more on Keenum, but it made up for, I think, a lot of poor adjustment and poor throws. You kind of question, hey, the Vikings have been able to get consistent movement. Having those pass interference penalties kind of move them forward, really put them in a position to really close out the game.
Well, okay, so can we talk about Case Keenum for a bit?
He's the hot hand. He's got momentum.
If by hot hand you mean a flame that burns completely out of control, then perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting. So PFF gives you they've got their post game. They also send all the reporters emails about here are the top 5 talking points from PFF on the offense and on the defense. And the offense, they're Keenum had an 80.8 grade, and I was like, that's pretty generous. Why would you do that?
Well, if you were only watching the game from the TV angles, that would make sense.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But when you can see the entire field and you can see the other half of his progression that was, probably wide open,
right.
Everyone, if not at least one person, then it's bewildering when you see somebody downfield on a perfect curl or hook route, and Case Keenum is like, where's Jerick McKinnon? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, right. Yeah, McKinnon got targeted 10 times in that game, by the way. I finally looked it up when we got home. Just incredible. That's the same number of times Thielen got targeted. That's ridiculous. But yeah, we're looking at the game. We're seeing Diggs get open way downfield, and we see a dump off to a tight end in the flat, which is yards are good, I guess, but giving up the opportunities that you have is.
Are you saying Morgan was as surprised as we were to be catching the ball?
David Morgan. Big part of the game. 3 receptions, pretty decent yardage.
I'll get a first down, but I'd rather you gave it one of the better guys.
This is
cool, but they're better.
I'm happy for David Morgan, and I'm happy for his mother. But I would rather not see Jerick McKinnon get as many touches as Stephon Diggs and Laquan Treadwell combined.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
Well, Treadwell was on the bike a lot in the first half. He was coming off the field, going on the bike and pedaling away there.
Oh, I didn't see that.
The guy and I beside me were debating as to whether he was 100% or not, because between series because the offense weren't off the field very much, but he was on the bike there because that was right in front of us.
There's an unsubstantiated rumor going around.
You're about to substantiate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, I want to qualify by saying I can't verify it. It may not be true.
Is he winking, Dusty?
No.
It may not be true.
Winking.
That Laquan Treadwell was on a pitch count for non-injury related reasons. So that's what I got.
Is that why he tried so hard on that circus catch attempt?
Yeah, right.
He had like 2 bites at the apple with his fingertips. I mean, I don't know who he's trying to impress, but
well, he's trying to get on the field, right?
Yeah.
This game was like not great for him, which is not out of the ordinary. He did have a great catch a couple of weeks ago, and that's about all he has on his resume. But yeah, you take a look at some of the people that you'd expect to be the top target earners. Adam Thielen, of course, 98 yards, 10 targets. He obviously did pretty well. Would have liked to see more from Stephon Diggs. The thing is, we don't know if that's like a product. I thought a lot of it had to do with Case Keenum. On that Thielen touchdown, Diggs also was wide open, and it was his first read.
Diggs was clearly his first read.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, maybe Diggs. And I go, right, you're looking at him, you're still looking at him, everybody's looking at you,
and then he bails out of the pocket.
Yeah, and then he goes, and Thielen's going, I'm free as well. I will make the easiest catch in the world and make them look stupid. And we went, we're fine with that.
Okay,
and David Morgan was going, why not me this time?
But to be fair, as they were lining up for that play, Arif goes to me, Adam Thielen for a touchdown. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Steve.
I think I called that one as well. But
he goes, Adam Thielen for a touchdown.
I'm not claiming to be anywhere near as good as you.
And it was clearly a matter of wanting to prove Arif right.
That's why they did it, I'm sure. Yeah, right. Well, so, the reason I thought it was Adam Thielen was because he was isolated off to the side, and they shaded the safeties off to their left. And so, you got a receiver and a tight end off to the left. You've got both of them in man coverage. You see, they were in cover 2. You see the safeties move off to the left, and they were shaded that way. So I figured pre-snap read, you go to Adam Thielen. He's got less coverage. He's probably going to get open against their second receiver. Brian Body Calhoun was already out of the game, I think, at that point.
Not the BBC.
Not the BBC.
No.
But yeah, and so I figured, Adam Thielen is probably more favorable coverage. He's got more space against the safety. They were going to go to him first. So I was kind of wrong in my reasoning, right? Because the first read was still Stephon Diggs. But I was right at the end. So, who cares?
And you didn't count on the Browns being as bad as the Browns are, because one of the shaded defenders went for Kyle Rudolph, and Stephon Diggs burned the other one so badly he's probably still at the hospital.
Yeah.
And so that would, if we had not scored a touchdown in that situation, that would have been embarrassing.
That would have been, it would have been really rough.
And it's not entirely on Case Keenum, because Rudolph had a couple of pretty high-profile drops. Athletic tight ends, not all they're cracked up to be.
Right.
I said that. Go ahead and block me. I don't care.
By the way, I'm still not blocked.
I know.
80 other people blocked.
I know.
He's actually never blocked anybody, so you're right.
The top rope. Jeez.
Oh, the tip of the cap. I'll dig my cap out of my bag so I can tip it to you later. It was amazing. That was unsurprisingly another thing the Vikings struggled with today was inability for offenders to block. But I guess my question to you is, how much of which was worse, the high-profile drops or the high-profile mistargeting on the part of Case Keenum?
Well, I think it's the mistargeting. I think it's because at this point, the Rudolph drops, you kind of just take them into stride. At some point. And also, I think also part of
but you can't take anything into stride when Case Keenum is throwing it to you.
So 2 good examples of that. The underthrow to Diggs, right? Just brutal, right? Diggs is wide open.
If he had caught that running, no one could have touched him.
Right. And then the other one is actually one of the drops by Rudolph. Probably wouldn't have been a drop if it didn't take so long for the ball to get there. Because, defender interference, not illegal interference, but defender contact caused that second drop, which freaking hamburger helper hands. You should just hold on to it, right? But a better thrown ball with a little bit more velocity probably would have led the defender pretty well. Probably would have led Kyle Rudolph really well. And so that's a problem, but some of those problems are again caused by Case Keenum, which is like astounding, right? The Vikings are 6-2, a lot of it with Case Keenum at the helm, and it's very clear when you watch him, the offense is not nearly as good as it could be. You compare this amazing defense with an explosive offense with either Bradford or Teddy. I don't really need to like say who, because both are good enough to make the offense explosive. And that Case Keenum is doing enough with these astounding skill players. And then when he doesn't have an astounding skill player, like an average level player, they're still like screwing up enough with the defense is giving them the kind of field position they need in order to get things done. So I think the more egregious thing is not Kyle Rudolph's drops, because those are expected, those are part of the targets. I think it's more that all of the missed opportunities from Case Keenum really feel like you're missing out on like a truly historically good team.
There was one point when we were actually trailing in the third, where we were lining up with Thielen wide and everybody else was run heavy. And it's like we're running out the clock from 2 points behind. And I'm like, now a lot of the new fans will have been going, I do not understand this does not make sense. While the rest of us who know a little bit and who know a lot, we're going, I do not fucking understand, sorry.
Which makes even less sense.
I do not fucking understand. It makes no sense whatsoever. Sorry, I'm British, we're a bit more liberal with our speech.
I don't worry about it.
The other thing that flummoxed me somewhat was, sorry, I'm a guest, I don't know. I've got my sticker and you're not getting it back. The other thing was when they moved their line, when they shifted the whole O-line, and then a flag came in and everyone on the ground went, illegal procedure or whatever it was. Right, you can try and be clever, guys, but you clearly got that very, very wrong, because our D just looked at him and went, what are you doing? And then the flag arced majestically onto the turf, and we went, we're fine with that. But what was that play meant to even be?
Well, and you want to talk about confusing decisions. What was that first time out at the end of the first half? Oh my God!
Yeah,
right? What the hell happened?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Did his earpiece go out? Like what? Because it looked like Keenum was like, no, I don't know what's happening.
So I asked a couple of people that were in the press box, like, well, I mean, because that like stands out to me. I was like, they're probably going to need that in the next 2 minutes, right? Like, and I was asking what was going on, and they're like, well, they were pretty confident that you couldn't get the play in, which I always feel like I get it, but I always feel like they should always have a play ready for situations where the radio goes out for just like one player, 2 players, or something like that.
Because you shouldn't be afraid to scheme like, because it happens so rarely.
Right.
You go, we've got these personnel, we're doing number 3.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
There's got to be one default that's better than burning a timeout when you're down by by one score, basically, with 2 minutes left in the half before you give up the ball. There has to be at least one thing you can do that's better than that. Right, and like that situation doesn't come up a ton, like you said, and so you're not like giving up the goat by like running your play, right?
No.
So I feel like that they should just like assume they'll have a running back and just call a play, or like figure out what play works with one running back and 3 to 4 receivers, right? Like, and from there, right? So I was kind of confused by that, especially because that situation only really matters when time is of essence. So it's probably a passing play. It already narrows down your options. That was kind of annoying, right? Pretty annoying, not just kind of annoying, really.
That was annoying.
Yeah,
when it
quite
happened.
annoying. Yeah. So I don't know, like. You think of all of the hallmarks of a Mike Zimmer coach team, there's a bunch of positives, right? You talk about like a really good defense, usually pretty disciplined. This year, you got some problems with penalties. A defense that like shows up late in games, which is kind of pretty new for Vikings fans. But there's some negatives, like game management is like certainly a pretty big negative of a Mike Zimmer coach team. Not as like egregious as like the old Andy Reid Eagles, but like still an issue, right? So you take the bad with the good, but you think of these solutions and you're like, okay, I thought of it just now, right? I'm not a coach. Guys.
It would be nice, and luckily, we were able to. One of the hallmarks, I think, of the team this year in particular, we saw some last year, but I think one of the hallmarks of the team this year has been really strong halftime adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think we saw that in 2014 when he first arrived too, and it's something we kind of got used to. We saw a lot less of that, I think, last year. But like last year, you kind of were like, yeah, that season was weird.
Because there wasn't any team to adjust. Like,
Yeah, right.
all the knobs were stuck at one. There was no.
Yeah, right.
But
Like, Anthony Ball was missing somehow. Oh, we got another Latavius Murray jersey. Look at that.
Latavius
New
Murray in the
Vikings
house.
fan right there.
That man just went to the game today, folks. You heard it here first. So, sorry.
No, that was great.
We're going to take just a moment before we go on to talk about the second half. We're still dragging a blogger from the Daily Norseman, so we're going to give him a few minutes to arrive and then return with our breakdown of the second half. And we're back after a series of very unfortunate events where we found out that not only is Eric not coming, but the pub where we're doing the show is closing. And so
Surprisingly early, by the way.
I know, this is like what, 5 p.m. Minneapolis time? That seems like an awfully early time to close a pub, right?
I mean, it's an early time to close a pub local time, right? It's like 10:40, right? They're going to close at 11.
Still,
I don't get it.
point remains. So we're going to defer our discussion of the second half until next week, but we do have a couple of people here who would like to take advantage of their only opportunity to probably ever ask us a question when we're both in the same room.
All right, my question is, so we would all love to have Teddy come back, but we can't prognosticate about that. If it was just Case Keenum the rest of the year, how far do you think we could go, best case scenario?
Best case. I think the Vikings are on track to make the playoffs. I'm not sure that they'll maintain their current position as like home field favorites in the next round of playoffs, especially with how difficult the schedule is going to be coming up. I mean, a bunch of road games. You've got Washington coming up. We're playing well, although not explicitly at the moment as we're recording in the game against Dallas. But they've been playing well. They've got pretty good offensive line, pretty good defensive line. I assumed the Atlanta game would be difficult. Maybe that's not the case. Who knows? But certainly not games that I think are like sort of guarantees or anything. So I don't think the Vikings will maintain their home field advantage. I do think they'll make the playoffs. As for how far they get into the playoffs, if it's just Case Keenum, obviously that's matchup dependent, but I do think there's a decent chance if you're a wild card that they'll probably win that first game. This is a surprisingly quality team given the backup quarterback situation, but I don't see them getting past like the first like true round of playoffs because the wild card's not real.
The staff here is like eyeing me, making sure that we're going to get out of here in time, and I am like punishing this beer, but even it is not making me confident that we could beat the Steelers if we play them at any point. So I have high hopes, but they are somewhat muted.
Right.
We'll say.
The only thing I ask is that if anyone takes the Vikings out of the playoffs, it's not Carson Wentz. That's all I need. It can be the Eagles.
Or the Seahawks.
Right. Because the Seahawks, that would be like 2 on the nose.
So as long as it's not MVP Carson Wentz.
Right. If it's not Carson Wentz, I'm good. If it's not the Seahawks, I think a lot of us are good. If it's like, who's the backup? Chase Daniel? If it's Chase Daniel with the Eagles, that's embarrassing, but not personally damaging to my brand.
Okay, next question.
So, with Teddy going off the pup, if Sam isn't feeling better, do you think they're just going to put him on IR? And because you don't want to get rid of Sloter because
Right.
we need the backup to the backup.
Right. You need a capable backup backing up. Right.
Right.
So that's a small if. If Bradford's not ready again. What I'm hearing isn't great about Bradford. When Teddy comes off the pup, because I don't think they're going to put him on IR. Because those are the only 2 options after the next 2 weeks, is to either put him on the roster or put him on IR. They wouldn't have activated him this early if they thought they'd had to put him on IR. Plus, evidently, it was a very open question about whether or not he'd even be in this game. And so he's pretty close to coming back. So he'll come back. I think that the next step will be to put Bradford on IR, which, if they had done it a couple weeks ago, they could have done short-term IR. Now they can't. But I still think that's the roster spot you have open. You put Bradford on IR. You keep Kyle Sluter, who has been very like competitive in terms of like which teams are offering him services. It's the whole reason the Vikings offered him $20,000 a week to stay on the practice squad. The whole reason the Vikings promoted him. They definitely want to keep him, and I think that the best way to keep him is not to send him through waivers, like you said, and put Bradford on IR. The real question is really, is the opening week, or I guess not the opening week, he did play a little bit in, the Pittsburgh game. Is that the last time we saw Bradford play? Is it the last time we saw Bradford play in a Vikings jersey? I think that's like a more prescient question than if they're going to put him on IR, because it really feels like he's not going to come back this season, if at all.
Which I could live with.
Well, yeah, I mean,
to be completely honest,
he always felt like a rental, so you never felt too emotionally invested in him.
No, you can turn him in with maybe a couple extra 1,000 miles than you had initially signed up for, but
right,
that's common practice.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it's not like the contract is bad. He's made out.
The staff is beginning to surround our table, so we're going to call it a half an episode and return with the second half of our analysis of the Browns game later this week when we preview. Oh, hey, it's bye week. Sweet. We don't have to preview anything.
Yeah, we don't have to preview anything. We're good.
Excellent. Eric Thompson, blogger for the Daily Norseman, sends his regrets. Sorry, Eric, we really wanted you here, but hey, this foreign travel thing is complicated, and this is honestly why I don't enjoy doing live radio as much, because
how much live radio have you done?
Enough to know I don't like it.
Fair. Yeah.
Just tonight.
Exactly. No. Enough to know that monkey wrenches like this screw things up too much, and so we're going to come back with the second half of the episode. Thank you to everybody who has shown up here tonight. Thank you to Arif, who is now going to finish editing his Facebook quote-unquote live thing.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone in London for coming to the game and hanging out with us. Thank you to all of our UK fans. Make sure you check out Norse Code Nessie on the Instagram and see where he's been. He hasn't left England yet, but
oh boy,
that sounds expensive. He hasn't left the UK yet, but the places he's been are pretty fantastic. So be sure to check out all of that, and of course stay up to date with everything you know and love about Norse Code, and also demand excellence. Demand Norse Code. And we'll see you next week.
Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, or wherever else fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, who can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. Our intrepid producer and occasional co-host James Pogachnik can be found on Twitter at Big Mono, or curating the official Norse Code Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. I'm your host with a firm grasp of the obvious, Dusty O'Connell, and my name is my handle on Twitter. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, your one-time donation can be made at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Please visit our website, NorseCodePodcast.com, where you'll find links to our Facebook and YouTube pages, along with the episode archive and some other good stuff. And any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be emailed to NorseCodePodcast@gmail.com. And on behalf of the entire Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.